Nobody in my family came to my wedding. The morning after, my father texted me asking for $8,400. I sent him $1. 3 weeks later, he showed up at my house with the police. There were 2 officers on my front lawn when I pulled into the driveway. Red and blue lights washed over the neighbors peering through their curtains. My husband's car was parked at an odd angle, like he'd rushed outside and stopped caring where it landed. And there he was. My father, Eduardo Flores, 61 years old, former high school principal, the man who had once been the most respected voice in any room he entered, standing in my grass like he owned the ground under it. He was gesturing at the officer beside him, speaking with the calm certainty of someone who had never once considered he might be wrong. According to him, I had stolen money from his account. Officer McKen met me halfway up the walkway, posture careful, voice already weighted with the seriousness of what he'd been told. "Ma'am," he said, "your father is reporting an unauthorized transfer. We're looking at a potential felony here." Felony. One word trying to swallow everything I had built. 14 years of service, security clearances, command rank in naval special warfare deployments, training cycles that broke people who were stronger than most would ever understand. All of it suddenly balanced on a story I hadn't even heard yet. I took one breath. Not a reaction. Reset. "Officer," I said evenly, "is your body camera on?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good." I unlocked my phone, opened my banking app, and held the screen directly in front of the camera. "Then show me the theft." I have been in the United States Navy for 14 years. I am a commander in naval special warfare, one of a small number of women to reach that level. People sometimes find that fact interesting. I don't. What matters is the work. The cold water. The sleep deprivation. The constant, quiet repetition of proving you belong in rooms that were not designed with you in mind. My father never attended a single promotion ceremony. Not because he was absent, but because he was selectively proud. He would tell others he was proud of me. He said it at church, at dinners, at his retirement party where he spoke about family values and strong children. He just never said it to me. I met David Reyes at a defense conference in San Diego 7 years ago. Civilian contractor, aerospace systems, the kind of man who listens more than he speaks and notices the things everyone else misses. He asked me 3 minutes into our conversation what part of my job was hardest. Not what I did. What hurt. No one asks that question in my world. We were engaged 11 months later. When David proposed, I called my father from the back porch of our rental in Virginia Beach. I watched the sky change color over the water and told him we had set a date and that I wanted the family there. I asked him plainly to walk me down the aisle. He said he would have to check his schedule. I should have understood that moment for what it was. I didn't. Not then. There are 5 people in my family. Eduardo. My father. Rosario. My mother, who follows his decisions the way weather follows pressure systems. My younger brother, the son, the one who received the college fund, the car at 16, and a steady flow of financial support that had nothing to do with need and everything to do with preference. Marco and I were close once. When we were children, before roles hardened into rules. Somewhere along the way, my brother became the future. And I became the exception they tolerated but never fully adjusted their expectations for. Because boys were potential. And girls, apparently, were just supposed to understand. Marco's life had been a long series of collapses that somehow never became his responsibility. 3 failed businesses. A divorce he blamed on timing. And a steady stream of financial emergencies that my father absorbed like they were weather events. Unavoidable, cyclical, someone else's problem to predict and pay for. When the emergencies got too large, my father stopped handling them alone and started calling me. Not to ask. To inform. Because somewhere along the way I had become the backup account in human form. Over the years I had paid for things I was never asked to agree to. Overdue rent, legal fees, broken leases, temporary gaps in cash flow. It was never framed as help. It was framed as obligation. Family duty. Stability. The price of being the one who made it. Repayment was never mentioned because repayment wasn't the point. The point was that I was reliable. A word that sounds like praise until you realize it means you are the solution other people don't have to become. The invitations went out in January. May 14th. A Saturday. Late afternoon ceremony, dinner reception in Norfolk at a waterfront venue David's mother had helped us choose. The first time she saw it, she cried quietly into her hands and said it felt like a beginning. That told me everything I needed to know. We reserved 3 pews for my family. White ribbons. Printed placards. Reserved. Family of the bride. By March, RSVPs came in from David's entire side and 2 cousins of mine I hadn't seen in 6 years, both sending polite regrets and gift cards with careful handwritten notes. We're sorry we can't make it. We love you. From my immediate family, nothing. In April I called my mother. She said they were coming. She said my father's knee was acting up. The drive was long. Marco was going through something. She said all of it in the soft, practiced tone of someone trying to make a fragile story hold together. I said I understood. I said, just tell me. She said she would. On the morning of May 14th, I stood in front of the mirror in my dress blues in the bridal suite. Full uniform. Every decoration placed exactly where it belonged. Hair pinned in the same pattern I had practiced 6 times the night before. A woman who had earned every line on her chest and was about to walk into a ceremony alone. I called my father. No answer. I called my mother. She picked up on the 4th ring. Mija, she said, too gentle, too careful. The voice of someone holding a door closed with her shoulder. We're so sorry, your father's knee. Are you coming? I asked. Silence. Not empty silence. Constructed silence. The kind that carries an answer no one wants to say out loud. We love you, she said finally. Thank you, I said. And I hung up. I stood there for 30 seconds looking at my reflection. Then I picked up my bouquet and walked out. I walked down the aisle with 142 people watching. And 3 empty pews on my left. I made it through the ceremony. I made it through the dinner. I danced with David. With his father. With his sisters. With his mother who held my face at the end of the night and said softly, "You are ours now. Do you understand? You are completely ours." I smiled because there are moments where smiling is the only socially acceptable form of survival. At midnight, I locked myself in the hotel bathroom and slid down the wall until my breath stopped behaving correctly. I didn't cry like someone breaking. I cried like someone finally running out of ways to hold themselves together. At 8:14 the next morning, my phone lit up. My father. Elena, we need $8,400 for your brother's venue deposit. Deadline is Tuesday. You've always been the responsible one. No congratulations. No apology. No acknowledgement that anything had happened at all. Just a bill. David read it over my shoulder. I felt his posture change before he said anything. Delete it, he said quietly. Don't engage. I opened my banking app. Transferred the money. Typed a memo. Best of luck. Sent it. Blocked the number. Put the phone down. Took a sip of coffee and realized for the first time in days I could actually taste it. Peace didn't last long. It never does when a habit is older than your boundaries. A week later I unblocked him. Not because I believed anything had changed. Because some part of me, trained, conditioned, practiced, still flinched at the idea of there being an emergency I hadn't responded to. What if something is wrong? The messages didn't arrive so much as accumulate. 41 of them building up over a week of silence like pressure behind glass. The first few were careful. Soft. Almost reasonable. The middle ones turned sharp. The last one stopped pretending. Petty little girl. After everything I gave you, you are an embarrassment to this family. You think those medals make you something? You are nothing without us. You have always been nothing. I read them the way I read threat summaries in an intelligence brief. No emotion, just structure. Sender. Escalation. Pattern. Then I closed the app. I didn't respond. I didn't debate. I didn't explain. I called Commander Patricia Hughes. She had been my executive officer for years, naval intelligence, the kind of officer who doesn't waste words because words can become evidence later. I told her only what was necessary. Escalating family contact, hostile messages, concern about boundaries. I did not mention the wedding. She didn't ask for detail. That was why I trusted her. Keep documenting, she said. Notify me if anything changes. 3 days later it did. Her call came at 9:47 a.m. on a Wednesday. I knew from the first syllable that this wasn't routine. Ma'am, she said, voice controlled in a way that meant it was not under control at all. Your father was at gate 4 this morning. I stopped writing. He was speaking to personnel. Asking about your schedule. Your building assignment. Your arrival times. There are things you learn quickly in my line of work. One of them is this. Location is not just information. It is access. And my father had just tried to access me through a secured system. This is being escalated, Hughes continued. Formally. That afternoon I reported it through base security. Lieutenant Commander James Okafor met me in a small office that smelled like paper and coffee. 15 years in military law enforcement had given him the kind of expression that doesn't waste energy on reaction. He listened, read the printed messages, and wrote everything down without interruption. When he finally spoke, it was precise. Commander Flores, this is now a documented security concern. Not a family matter. He paused just long enough for the distinction to settle. If he returns, we treat it as a breach attempt. I nodded. Understood. Do you have a residence he knows? David and I had a house in Norfolk. Not hidden. Not fortified. Just ours. Yes, I said. He's been there before. Okafor exhaled once through his nose. Not judgment. Assessment. Change your locks. Cameras if you don't already have them. And I want a direct line of communication from you until this is resolved. That evening, David installed a full camera system. Front, back, side gate. While I sat at the kitchen table reading a letter that had arrived at the base earlier that day. It was handwritten. Addressed to my rank and full name. That alone told me everything about intent. The cursive slanted hard to the right, the kind of handwriting I remembered from childhood arguments. Angry handwriting. Certain handwriting. You will die alone with those medals. I didn't burn it. I sealed it in a plastic evidence bag, placed it under my service pistol in the top drawer, and called Commander Hughes. Then I called a lawyer. Marcus Stein had practiced family and harassment law in Virginia for nearly 2 decades. His profile listed military-adjacent cases as a specialty, which in practice meant he understood what most attorneys didn't. When civilian behavior crosses into command concern, the system changes shape. He answered on the first ring. I gave him everything in order. Messages, timeline, documentation, the gate incident, the letter. I didn't summarize. I didn't soften anything. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a long pause. Commander, he said finally, you don't have one issue. You have 3 concurrent legal tracks: harassment, threats, and security interference. They're separate, but they reinforce each other. I want the restraining order. You'll get a draft by Thursday. He hesitated. And I want you to know something. Once Jack gets involved, this stops being private. It becomes procedural. I understand procedure. I figured you might. The Tuesday it escalated, I was in a classified briefing. Lights down. Screens active. Phone's supposed to be off. Mine was face down on the table anyway. At 2:31 p.m., it started vibrating. Then it didn't stop. I slipped it under the table. Norfolk. David. Norfolk, David. Then a message in all caps. They are at the house. Come home now. I stood up immediately. No explanation. No hesitation. I left the room because there are moments where the mission changes mid-breath, and everyone in that room already knew what that looked like. I drove home in 9 minutes. And I have already described what I found when I arrived. The lights. The neighbors. My father standing in my grass like he belonged there, performing grief and outrage for Officer McCann as if my driveway were a stage and not my home. What I have not described is what it felt like to step out of that car and watch 42 years of family mythology collapse into something small enough to fit inside a single breath. A man who had never shown up for me. Standing in my yard. Trying to weaponize the system I had served for 14 years against me. Officer McCann had approached with the word felony already formed in his mouth. I had taken one breath. And asked about the body camera. I held my phone up to it. Close enough that there was no room for interpretation. The banking app was open. Transaction history displayed. I scrolled to the date that mattered. May 15th. The morning after my wedding. Recipient, Eduardo A. Flores. Account ending in the same 4 digits I had used for years without thinking because trust had once been automatic in my life. Amount, $1. Memo, best of luck. McCann looked at the screen the way trained officers do when reality starts refusing to cooperate with the story they were given. He checked the date. Then the amount. Then the recipient account. The same account my father had claimed had been the victim. He looked at me. Then at my father. My father's face had gone pale in a way I had never seen before. Not fear exactly. Something closer to exposure. This isn't theft. I said. It's a documented transfer from my account to his. Authorized, traceable, and recorded. I paused. What this is harassment. And I will be filing accordingly. Vahin turned to my father. His voice changed. Not louder. Just colder. Mr. Flores, you filed a false report. You provided inaccurate information to law enforcement. This is not a criminal theft matter. This is not supported by evidence. That was the moment the mask started to fail. First confidence. Then composure. Then something underneath both of them that looked like panic trying to remember how to become anger again. She's lying, my father said quickly. Too quickly. After everything I gave her, everything, I asked for help and she sends me $1 like I'm nothing, like I'm... Stop. It wasn't loud. Didn't need to be. Command voice isn't volume. It's certainty. He stopped mid-sentence. Not because he agreed. Because something in him recognized authority it could not negotiate with. Get off my property, I said. The officers moved in without drama. One on each side. No force, no struggle, just presence. The kind of presence that removes options without needing to explain itself. My father allowed himself to be walked to the car. At the curb he paused. Turned back. One hand on the door. And looked at me like a man trying to decide which version of reality would hurt less if he chose to believe it. You think those medals make you better than me? He said. I stayed on the porch. The neighbors were still watching. The lights were still flashing across everything like the scene refused to settle into normality. No, I said. They just mean I earned mine. He got into the car. And as he pulled away, I saw him reach for his phone. I went inside. Sat at the kitchen table. David made coffee without asking a question. He set a mug in front of me and sat down across from me like silence was something he understood how to handle. We didn't speak for a while. That was his way of saying he knew I didn't need words yet. Eventually I called Marcus Stein. File it, I said. Now. Then I called Lieutenant Commander Okafor and reported everything that had just occurred. Then I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was already careful. Already prepared. Elena. Dad just filed a false police report at my house, I said. He claimed I committed felony theft. He drove 3 hours to do it. Silence. He also went to my base and asked personnel for my schedule and location. Another silence. And he sent a threatening letter. I have it preserved as evidence. My voice stayed level the entire time. I am filing for a restraining order. I'm telling you before it becomes formal. When she finally spoke, it was softer. He loves you, Elena. I closed my eyes briefly. Mom, I said not unkindly, I understand what he feels. I'm telling you what he did. Those are not the same thing. She hesitated. He was very hurt, she said finally. About the $1. That was the moment something in me went very still. Not anger. Clarity. I love you, I said. And I hung up. The restraining order was granted on a Thursday afternoon by Judge Patricia Wren in Norfolk Circuit Court. 2 years. 500 feet. Residence, workplace and duty station included. The citation for filing a false police report was entered into the Norfolk PD system and attached to the case file. Marcus submitted everything as one coordinated packet. Messages, financial documentation, the gate incident, the threatening letter. Officer McCann's incident report followed. Clean, factual, annotated with the banking evidence shown on camera and my father's statements under confrontation. Lieutenant Commander Okafor's report was included as well. 19 pages. Precise. Unemotional. It documented a security breach involving inquiries into a commissioned officer's movements, schedule and assignment. His conclusion was simple. Potential continuing risk if contact persists. Not dramatic. Just final in the way institutional language becomes when it stops trying to soften the truth. My father's attorney, a man in Lexington named Garrett Wells who specialized in family disputes and had clearly not expected to inherit a case involving military security documentation, called Marcus Stein the week after the restraining order was issued. He asked if there was a path to amicable resolution. Marcus called me that evening. He wants to apologize, Marcus said. I was looking out at my front yard. No patrol cars. No neighbors clustered on lawns. No red and blue reflections breaking up the night. Tell him the restraining order stands for its full term, I said. Tell him I wish him well. And tell him I'm not interested in a conversation. Marcus passed it along. Garrett Wells did not call again. 3 weeks later, I heard about my brother Marco's wedding the way most things from my family reached me now. Indirectly, filtered, softened by someone trying to decide how much truth I could safely carry. My cousin Adriana called me. One of the two who had once sent a gift card and a note that said we love you. There's no wedding, she said carefully. The venue deposit had never been paid. The $8,400 my father had demanded from me had never appeared from anywhere else. Anne Marco's fiancé, now no longer his fiancé, had decided she did not want to marry into a family under federal scrutiny for harassment involving a military officer. Adriana said it like someone stepping around glass. I thanked her. I told her the gift card had gone toward champagne at our reception and that David and I had raised a toast in her name. That made her laugh, short, surprised, relieved, like she hadn't known she was allowed. Are you okay? She asked after a moment. I'm good, I said. And I was. Not because anything had been repaired. Some things don't repair cleanly. They settle into new shapes and you learn how to live around them. Not because the grief was gone either. There is a particular kind of grief that comes from a parent who can perform love in public but cannot sustain it in private, and it doesn't dissolve just because paperwork goes your way. I was good because I had stopped negotiating with it. That weekend, David and I stayed home for Memorial Day. No flights. No obligations. No performances of normalcy for anyone else's comfort. We ordered takeout, ate it on the back porch and watched the sky shift through colors that didn't need names. In the quiet before dark, I held my coffee. David held his. The Ring cameras blinked soft green at the edges of the property, patient and unassuming. Somewhere, my father was telling his version of events to whoever would listen. At church, at dinner tables, in the small spaces where stories get rewritten until they feel survivable. I didn't need his version. I had mine documented in receipts, reports, camera footage, and court orders. But more than that, I had the present tense. A house that was mine without dispute, a marriage that didn't require shrinking, and mornings that began without negotiation. My father used to say medals didn't matter. That service didn't make a person. He wasn't entirely wrong about that part. He was just wrong about what comes next.